There's a group of animals on the planet today that's competing with humans for world domination. They're miniature creatures living together in bustling cities. Their ingenuity and inventiveness is more than a rival for man's. Theirs is a world where the individual doesn't count and where decisions are made collectively. It's a society that functions as a single superorganism. Welcome to the planet of the ants. When it comes to sheer numbers, this planet is ruled by insects. The most numerous of all are the ants, and there are around 10,000 known species. The combined number of ants on Earth far outweighs all other land animals put together, including man, and they weigh millions of tons. Ants have been crawling all over this planet for about 100 million years. They belong to a group of social insects that includes wasps and bees. Like them, they live in highly organized colonies. Ants have used their time well to adapt to and exploit almost every habitat. They come in a bewildering variety of shapes and sizes, each perfectly adapted to a particular lifestyle. Like human beings, they've even learnt to modify their surroundings to suit their needs, often building elaborate structures. Some live in underground burrows. Others have developed ways of using local building materials to construct complex cities. There are even ants that lead a nomadic way of life, building a new home for themselves every night when they stop to rest. Just like humans, there are hunter-gatherers, vegetarian gardeners, and even those that keep livestock. And every way of life has given rise to a different social organization. A typical colony contains a single egg-laying queen, many workers, and the colony's brood. All the workers are the queen's sterile daughters, unable to breed themselves. Instead, they're responsible for nest construction and maintenance, foraging, tending the brood and queen, and defense of the colony. The queen is the focus of attention. She's basically an egg-laying machine, but she also controls the colony by producing chemical messages. From egg to adult, a single ant goes through 4 stages of metamorphosis, and after several weeks, it becomes a fully functioning adult. First, the eggs laid by the queen hatch into larvae. These are nursed and fed by adult workers until they turn into pupae, which finally develop into workers themselves. Living in large societies requires sophisticated communication. Ants use pheromones to pass chemical messages to each other. Each colony has its own trademark scent produced by the queen. Intruders are easily identified and viciously attacked. A city of ants is thought of as a single superorganism. It's a society in which individuals are dispensable. There's only one aim: for the colony to survive. Like all cities, there are many different professions, and each ant has its own job. The evolution of the ant has created some of the most startling and complex societies on the planet. The first job for young, newly emerged workers is nursery duty, tending eggs, larvae and pupae. As the workers grow older, they become architects, taking care of nest design and construction. Finally, they turn into hunters and foragers, leaving the nest to provide food for the colony. More sophisticated ant societies have developed symbiotic relationships with other organisms, a mutual dependency where one couldn't survive without the other. Cooperation, combined with sophisticated communication systems, has allowed ants to exploit their environment in a way rivaled only by human beings. But ants have been around nearly 10 times longer than man and may well outlive us, turning this world into a planet of the ants. Ant communities started from very humble beginnings. The seemingly selfless devotion of the individual for the greater good of the colony is the key to their success. We travel to Australia to get an insight into what early ant societies may have been like. These are bulldog ants, and at 3.5 centimetres long, they're amongst the biggest and most aggressive ants in the world. They're ferocious hunters, able to kill animals several times their own size. But in ant terms, they're primitive. Their sense for cooperation and communication is unsophisticated. They live together in colonies of only about 1,000 ants, little more than small predatory packs. Bulldog ants tend to hunt individually. Watch how the new arrival becomes a nuisance at the scene of the kill. Compared to other ants, it's an uncoordinated attempt to provide food for the colony. Despite this, bulldog ants are formidable killers, and no amount of struggling can save this caterpillar from the bite of the hunter's terrifying mouthparts. The bulldog's nest is little more than a network of tunnels, built to about 1 metre below ground, where workers guard their queen and brood. At last, the hunter has managed to drag her victim underground. Here, it will be dismembered and consumed by the colony. Social insects are unique in feeding and caring for the next generation, and more advanced ant societies even feed their young on partially digested, regurgitated food. Young bulldog ants are different. They like their meat raw. The larvae are active, gorging themselves on the fresh kill. They seem almost like maggots. The nurse workers merely move them away once they sense the youngsters have had their fill. When they first hatch, the larvae are even more aggressive. They'll feed on anything and will even turn into cannibals. When it comes to feeding, adults will sometimes help by breaking the skin of the kill. And once the youngsters are attached to their meal, there's no stopping them. The nest workers don't just look after larvae. They also ensure the colony's queen is well nourished by feeding her their own infertile eggs. Unlike most ant queens, the bulldog queen is only slightly bigger than the largest workers. She's distinguished only by her behaviour, and 2 black scars on her back show where she shed her wings. This happened after the single mating flight that created the colony. It's the queen's job to ensure the colony's future, and she'll produce fertile eggs throughout her life. A queen ant can live for 15 years or more. This one lays a single egg at a time, a slow process compared to more sophisticated ant species. Watch closely as a small worker ant crouches beneath its queen, ready to receive the new egg and take it to the safety of a brood chamber. This isn't as easy as you might imagine. Bulldog ants are fairly clumsy, so picking up an egg and moving it to safety is a somewhat hit-and-miss affair. It can take a long time to complete this simple task. Eventually, another worker notices the fragile egg on the ground and rescues it, placing it alongside other eggs, ready for hatching. But despite the bulldog ants' primitive behaviour, they still manage to work together as a single unit. they're able to recognize their own and will fight any intruder. To protect their nest, they use terrifying mouthparts called mandibles. The interdependence seen in bulldog ants may have given rise to the highly complex societies seen in more advanced ants. In Europe, we meet the garden ant. It's found almost everywhere, in our cities, in gardens and parks, under rocks, pots and slabs. Garden ants live in much more complex societies than bulldog ants. At first sight, they seem to panic when their shelter is discovered and exposed to sunlight. A seething mass of ants, running frantically back and forth, quickly disappears into holes in the ground. But take a closer look. What appears to us like uncoordinated chaos is in fact a well-organized plan of action. The first priority for the workers is to carry the cocoons and pupae to safety underground. Only then do the workers return to collect the actual eggs. Larvae and pupae represent the colony's future survival. There's already been a great investment of time and energy into the rearing of them. The eggs are less valuable since the queen can easily lay more. Once the workers have cleared the area, all the ants retreat to the safety of their underground tunnels. This efficient process ensures just one thing: the survival of the colony. The safety of the individual simply doesn't count. In Central and South America, we find a truly formidable and aggressive super predator. It's a voracious hunter-gatherer whose lifestyle demands very different social structures and behavior. Take a look at these ferocious little warriors. They're army ants, flesh-eating nomads that live and hunt together in mobile units, up to 750,000 in number. Any army is dependent on discipline, efficient division of labor, and good communications, and these ants are some of the best soldiers on the planet. There are different castes of workers in a variety of sizes from 4 to 12 millimeters long. Each is designed for a specific role. They live in mobile nests, assembled out of their own bodies, masses of ants clinging to each other. Like living chains of barbed wire, they fearlessly defend their queen and the next generation. When the legs of a worker ant are stretched, a reflex response puts the ant into a trance-like state. This enables it to endure long periods of immobility. Once in place, workers can stay motionless for days, allowing them to be used as bridges and rope ladders by other members of the army. Army ants are always on the move. Their predatory lifestyle forces them to break camp frequently, moving from one hunting ground to the next to satisfy their endless appetite. Every day, a vast column of workers leaves the temporary nest to go on raids. These are the workers of a Central American army ant. Flanking the column are large soldier ants, equipped with massive crushing mandibles, formidable weapons that will help them protect the smaller worker ants. The bite of the soldier ant is incredible. Once the jaws lock in place, they remain shut forever, even if the ant's head is broken off. The lock of the jaw is so strong that local Indian tribes use them as stitches to close gaping wounds. Like a giant tentacle, the column reaches into the forest from the ant's temporary nest site. The ants are almost unstoppable. They're even capable of building living bridges from their own bodies, each ant relentlessly following the trail of pheromones laid by the advance party. And individual workers seem to know exactly what their task involves. the miniature army moves quickly and with purpose. The head of the column fans out and is looking to kill. Anything that gets in the way of these ants is overpowered. Even small lizards or birds can be fair game. A single ant sting may be painful and contains a high concentration of tissue-dissolving enzymes. So multiplied by hundreds, it's a force to be reckoned with. For the victim, death must be excruciating. When they come across prey like this spider, the ants swarm over the helpless animal, and killing soon turns to butchering. A grasshopper like this is usually well camouflaged, no more than a green leaf with limbs. But its disguise won't help it now. The ants are virtually blind. They respond to scent and movement. Once prey has been located, the signal to kill spreads quickly throughout the army. A coordinated and relentless attack results, and the victim is overpowered. Compared to the undisciplined mugging of the bulldog ant, this is a fighting force of brutal efficiency. The grasshopper's body is butchered and its parts transported back to base. The colony and its offspring are always hungry, so the raiding parties must maintain a constant supply of food for the camp. A spider's fangs and lethal venom are also no deterrent to the marauding mass of ants. Sheer weight of numbers is what counts in this battle. The spider's desperate attempts to lunge at its attackers are futile. There can be no escape. Some would-be victims are luckier. This stick insect avoids detection by standing motionless on tiptoes above the merciless killers. And a burrowing cockroach's impressive armour may save its skin in the face of such an enemy. This column of death can stretch as much as 200 metres into the forest. That's like a line of people 45 kilometres long, slaughtering everything in its path. Army ants are among the top predators in tropical forests. A single army can kill up to 50,000 animals a day. Communication is via chemical messages spread from one ant to its surrounding neighbours, a method known as pyramid smelling. It's a quick and efficient way to coordinate the behaviour of several 100,000 ants. And the entire colony will respond as one. It works like a single superorganism made up of many individuals. They are so interdependent that a single ant left to its own devices would be disoriented, helpless, and ultimately die. All decisions are made collectively, and no single ant gives the orders. Their primitive eyes are incapable of forming images, but they can detect light. There's a theory that the workers basically function like one massive compound eye, using the sun for orientation on their raids. For about 2.5 weeks at a time, while its offspring is in the larval stage, the colony moves to a new area every single night, leaving the previous day's hunting ground to recover. This can mean up to 750,000 ants on the move, carrying about 250,000 larvae with them, and advancing in a column as much as 200 metres long. They'll probably migrate around 400 metres into the forest before striking camp in a new overnight nest. They appear to choose the direction of the day's most prolific killing trail for their journey, perhaps in the hope that the new area will contain as much prey. From their new camp, they'll launch another devastating attack the following day, wreaking havoc on a fresh hunting ground. But once the larvae have developed into pupae, the army ant's behaviour changes, and they enter a rest phase of about 2 weeks, camping at a single site. But that doesn't stop the raiding parties. Each day they wipe out life across thousands of square metres of the forest floor. To avoid covering old ground, they calculate a different route each day, about 123 degrees from the previous day's warpath. There they'll find more fresh meat. By covering new ground every day, the ants ensure that forest dwellers have time to recover from the onslaught before being hit by a new raid of the killer ants. In the same forest, another army of ants is on the move. These workers are constructing a new wing for their massive underground city. It's more like a modern metropolis than an insect's nest. On average, 2.5 million ants live together in an underground network of chambers 50 metres across and 6 metres deep. To build this city, the tiny workers must move hundreds of tons of soil. Like the army ants, these workers are on the prowl, but they're gardeners and vegetarians. In fact, other than a few beetles, termites and humans, they're the only animals on Earth that deliberately cultivate a plant for food. They are the leafcutter ants. Once they've found a suitable tree for harvesting, the army of workers wastes no time. Using their tough mouthparts, they cut the leaves into neat pieces. Often weighing 10 times their own body weight, the pieces are transported back to the nest for processing. Size for size, humans would lose out massively in this weightlifting contest. The ants' efforts are like an average man lifting around 800 kilograms. It's amazing to see how the ants manage to hold on to the surface of stems and leaves, even when upside down. The secret of their success is found between the claws of their feet. Balloon-like organs called aurelia secrete a sticky fluid. With each step, the claws are extended first, but immediately retract on contact with the surface. The aurelia now inflate with blood, so they protrude between the claws and touch the surface, creating a sticky bond. At the end of each step, the aurelia deflate, the claws extend, and the ant moves on. Ants can actively control their sticky feet, but the aurelia also operate innately in response to an external force, like wind or raindrops. Cutting the brain out of the process means the ant can react more quickly. The ants work tirelessly and methodically. Before long, entire branches are stripped bare. Leafcutter ants are the dominant herbivore of the tropics, carrying away up to 17% of annual leaf production. Humans, who have to live alongside them, regard them as a major agricultural pest, lethal to the plants they're trying to grow or harvest. Just like the army ants, leafcutters also operate a caste system amongst their workers. ranging from formidable soldiers with massive mandibles to tiny workers only a tenth of their size. And again, each worker has its own set of tasks, which it will complete without question or deviation. But strangely, leafcutter ants don't eat leaves. They adopt a far more cunning strategy. Watch what happens next. As the leaves are brought back to the nest, a different group of workers takes over. They bite the leaves into manageable pieces and roughen up the surface. Then they graft a special type of fungus on them and stack them neatly in growing chambers. It's the fungus that will become their food. This fungus is unique and only found in the nests of leafcutter ants. The ants depend on it for food, and the fungus depends on the ants to grow and survive. Like all crops, the fungus can be threatened by disease, but the ants have an impressive means of pest control. They carry bacteria on them that produce antibiotics, enough to keep even a ravaging mold infestation under control. The ants tend their gardens with great care, meticulously weeding out any infected tissue or rotting matter. There's even a system of garbage disposal. Waste is deposited in special chambers, and a caste of workers, shunned by the rest of the colony, spend their days aerating it to accelerate the breakdown, just like turning over compost. This is a complex society. Each ant has an individual task, a task perfectly coordinated with the activities of the entire colony. Not all the workers are gardeners. Some work in the nursery, looking after the colony's precious offspring, their larvae and pupae. At first sight, this might look disorganized, but it's not. Each ant has a clear objective. The fungus is the lifeblood of the colony. Leafcutter ants don't eat anything else. It sustains workers, their massive queen, and her larvae alike. The ants guard it with their lives. Each leafcutter colony develops a slightly different strain of the fungus. Should the gardens in one colony fail, the workers will raid neighbouring nests to steal grafts of fungus and start their gardens again. Life in the colony is a never-ending cycle of cutting leaves, grafting and growing fungus, weeding and recycling, all in a single massive colony that may be over a decade old. Leafcutters are certainly equipped for the job. Their impressive jaw parts or mandibles work like a pair of garden secateurs, chopping through the leaves like a knife through butter. They're even strong enough to cut through leather. Although the ants can consume almost a fifth of the vegetation in their forest, they ensure the survival of the trees by operating a kind of crop rotation, moving on to the next tree before the damage is too great. Leaves from any one tree are kept in separate chambers. This is good farming. Should the leaves turn out to be infected or toxic to the ants' fungus, keeping them separate avoids failure of the entire harvest. This complex system of interdependency between the ants and the fungus evolved around 50 million years ago. But how it developed, and whether the ants found the fungus or the fungus found the ants, is still a mystery. In Australia, a different kind of farming ant has developed equally impressive ways to survive. These ants even keep their own livestock in specially designed stables. They're weaver ants, so called for the elaborate nests they build in leafy trees. thousands of little architects all working together to construct a single masterpiece of natural engineering. Weaver ants also live in complex societies, communicating by scent, just like other ants. But their meeting and greeting ritual is quite different and elaborate, and it's an important adaptation. The guard ant acts like a sentry at a border checkpoint, investigating passers-by and attacking any strangers. Weaver ants are also killers, and their home tree is where they hunt for insects. They're so successful that citrus farmers in China have used them as a means of pest control for at least 1700 years, making these ants one of the earliest agents of biological control ever used by man. Like army ants, weavers also construct living rope ladders fashioned out of the workers' bodies. They're not only useful pathways into the trees, they're also an effective protection against intruders. The worker ants have a fearsome bite and secrete a painful acid on the resulting wound. It's the way the weaver ants build their nests that's given them their name. Take a look how, against the odds, these tiny insects pull the thick, leathery mangrove leaves together into a spherical shape. And if the gap's too great for a single ant to bridge, they form chains, pulling the two sides together. A single ant could never do this on its own, but in large numbers, with every individual cooperating, anything is possible. By shortening the chain of ants one at a time, the edges of the leaf are gradually pulled together. The living leaves also provide excellent camouflage for the nest. They're tough enough to help guard against predators and provide protection from the elements. These are among the most complex ant nests in the world. How do the ants fasten the leaves together? Incredibly, they use their own larvae to glue the edges in place. The larvae produce silk. While stimulating the silk glands with their antennae, the workers use the larvae like tubes of glue. The silk shrinks as it dries, and tension is gradually created. When the workers holding the leaves in place feel them pulling together, they wake from their trance and leave their positions. Watch closely how this worker stimulates the larva's silk glands and gingerly moves her from one leaf to the next, literally weaving the structure together. The end result is a sturdy, waterproof nest housing about 100,000 ants. But the weaver ants don't just build houses for themselves. They also construct smaller stable blocks like this one to provide protection and shelter for other animals. These scale insects are an example. Watch how these black weaver ants herd and tend them almost like cattle. But protection and care doesn't come without a price. This is a dairy. What the ants are after is honeydew. They milk it from the abdomens of the scale insects. The common tit butterfly always entrusts weaver ants to bring up its caterpillars. It's a symbiotic relationship. The ants tend and guard the caterpillar in exchange for droplets of sweet fluid that it produces. This weaver ant is stimulating the caterpillar's honeydew gland with its antennae. But this is an uneasy relationship. The caterpillar isn't quite as docile as some livestock. It likes to eat the farmers. Despite this occasional ungrateful behaviour, the supply of honeydew it provides still makes it a welcome guest in the weaver ant's nest tree, and it's encouraged to stay. The ant-caterpillar relationship is both give and take. Once again, it illustrates the ant's strategy of individual sacrifice for the greater good of the colony. The weaver ants tolerate the killer caterpillar since the benefits of its presence outweigh any losses. So much so that they gently usher it into one of their stable blocks for extra protection. Virtually all over the world, ants have learnt to live together in large cities, creating impressive works of architecture and adjusting the design of their nest to suit local building materials. These pine forests in Scotland couldn't be more different to the lush tropical forests we've just seen. But here we also find complex ant nests. This is a city of wood ants built from discarded pine needles. They may love a colony to keep the nest at the right temperature. The ants have learnt to cope with this problem by selecting a south-facing site where the sun can provide heating, regulate temperature and airflow. Again, it's cooperation and strength in numbers that gives the ants the upper hand. These caterpillars' normal defence strategy is to drop off the tree, but faced with an army of wood ants, they don't stand a chance. A last-minute attempt to evacuate comes too late. But another pair of eyes is watching carefully, ready to attack. There's plenty of other prey to be had. But beware something that looks like a free meal. Some insects have learnt to turn the tables on the killer ants. This is a Clytra beetle laying a single egg. If you look closely, you can see how it disguises its egg with scales, so it almost looks like a mini fur coat. Colony's eggs and larvae are very precious. After all, they're the nest's future, and the motivation for each ant to devote itself entirely to their care. The workers will not only nurse them, but also ferociously guard both them and the queen against intruders. But they are helpless against the beetle egg. It's hatched into a carnivorous grub with a voracious appetite. They're powerless against its tough protective shell and have no means of attacking it. Safe within the nest, the grub spends a whole year in luxury, eating as much as it wants. Finally, it matures into an adult beetle and leaves, a guest anybody would be glad to see the back of. The dry savanna of Mexico is home to a different kind of ant, and yet another ingenious survival strategy. Exploitation of another organism doesn't have to be one-sided. It can benefit both parties. The harsh conditions of this habitat have given rise to an incredibly intricate relationship between ants and a plant. These are dry grassland plains, home to browsing animals from cattle to insects. The arid climate and grazing pressure make this a stressful environment for plants, but not for the acacia tree. It manages to keep its green leaves all year round and thrives thanks to thousands of little helpers, acacia ants. The trees stand comfortably apart, each in their own patch and adorned with massive thorns. Take a closer look. These thorns aren't just to poke unwanted intruders, they're also home for the tree's resident ant colony. The workers bite a hole into the tip of each thorn while it's still green and hollow it out. The resulting chambers serve as the nest, and in a mature acacia tree, almost every single thorn will be inhabited. The queen lives in a large thorn, where she lays her eggs and is fed and looked after by the workers. The eggs are then carried off to other thorns, which serve as brood chambers. Within them, the eggs develop just like those of other ant species, so the entire tree serves as a busy metropolis. The tree's not just a home, it also supplies all of the ants' food requirements. On the branches between the thorns, we find small green pools that produce a continuous supply of nectar, but without a flower. Their exclusive purpose is to serve as a canteen for the hungry ant population. But the ants also require protein, fat and vitamins in addition to sugar. Incredibly, the tree also satisfies this demand and grows small food parcels on the tips of specialized leaves. The ants collect these to feed themselves and their larvae. It appears that for the tree, these food parcels have no other use than to keep the ants well fed. The acacia tree certainly goes to a lot of trouble to sustain its ant population. In return, it receives protection, a whole army of aggressive bodyguards. The ants jealously guard their nest tree and use their ferocious stings and strong bites to drive off any invading browsers or pests. This careless grasshopper soon finds itself outgunned and outnumbered. Whilst on the tree, it will be subjected to repeated attacks by the resident acacia ants. The intruder will get no peace until it leaves their nest tree. Watch how this worker fearlessly hangs on to the struggling grasshopper, determined to drive it away. Enough is enough. The acacia's green leaves are simply not worth it. For young and small trees in the savannah, competition from rival seedlings is also an issue. Again, not a problem for the acacia tree. Incredibly, its miniature bodyguards have also turned gardeners and will kill any seedlings within a certain radius of their tree. They use their sharp mandibles to chew through the seedling stems. Although these ants may not be intelligent creatures, evolution has worked in their favour and taught them how to keep their tree healthy and thriving. The acacia tree and its ants are heavily dependent on each other. It's a highly sophisticated relationship, where each individual ant selflessly lays down its life for the good of the colony and host alike. For 100 million years, ants have been perfecting the art of living together in complex societies. They've developed ingenious ways of adapting to their environment, discovering elaborate survival strategies to suit their habitats. They can thrive almost anywhere, from northern forests to dry savanna, from coastal mangroves to inner city gardens. But they're most numerous and have developed the greatest variety of lifestyles in tropical jungles. Here, ant gardeners and hunters live side by side, both exploiting the forest with great success. Army ants are the most voracious predators of other invertebrates in these forests. While leafcutter ants strip the trees of leaves faster than any other herbivore, including large mammals. The diversity and number of ant species in tropical and temperate habitats has given rise to a host of intricate relationships with both plants and animals. Acacia ants are so closely linked with their nest tree that neither could survive without the other. Wherever ants live, they have found ways of building complex cities, sometimes constructing stunning works of architecture. These societies are so sophisticated that workers are divided into different castes, each a task force in itself. But it's social cooperation and selfless devotion to the colony that makes ants so remarkable. Although each individual has its own job, the entire colony acts as one, responding to chemical messages passed from one to the other as if linked by an invisible nervous system. Ants are among the most successful animals alive today. They've thrived for millions of years, and they're here to stay on the planet of the ants.